Start with some questions that are really maybe some very basic fundamental questions, but for example, how old were you when you first laced your pair of skates?
Well, I think that I was pretty young. The memory that I have is of my dad bringing me out to a pond near our house and getting my skates on, getting me all bundled up and getting me onto the ice. But I just remember not wanting to do it. I just wanted him to push me around or pull me around the ice, and I just didn't want to put the effort in. But I think I was fairly young, like probably about 3 years old or so, and it just became part of the routine, just going to the ice and trying to learn how to do it on my own.
So besides skating itself, what kind of, were you attracted to a particular sport?
Yeah, definitely hockey. I mean, when I was growing up, most of my friends were boys, and they were all playing hockey. And apparently the story goes that my dad took me to 2 different rinks. One had hockey and one had ringette. And he gave me the choice of what I wanted to play. And apparently my mom said that he probably said to me something like, do you want to play hockey with all of your friends, or do you want to play ringette with a bunch of people you don't know? And so it was like an easy choice for me, and so I started playing hockey at around 5 years old.
No bias there, no bias there. So would you consider yourself a competitive person?
I think I inherited competitiveness through my dad again. I actually have an interesting story. So when I was about 12 years old, so I'm from Winnipeg, and my parents have a cottage which is about 2 hours northeast of Winnipeg. And I was out there, I was about 12 years old, and my friend had come for a visit as well. And we found out there was going to be a bike race nearby on the trails at my cottage. And we thought it'd be so fun to go out and watch this bike race. And so the morning of the race, it started off like hot, like a typical Manitoba summer day. It was about 30 degrees. And we thought, while we were waiting for the bike race, we thought we'd go out on our own bikes and just like ride up and down the hills and kind of pretended we were in a race of our own. So after about like 30 minutes where we kind of tired ourselves out, we thought to ourselves, hey, we're pretty good at this. Like, why don't we enter the race? So the first issue was that we didn't have helmets. But my dad had snowmobile helmets, so I thought, well, we can just throw my dad's snowmobile helmets on and we'd be fine, not thinking how bulky and hot they'd be in the 30-degree weather. And then the second issue was that my friend was on a BMX bike, so it was just like a little one-speed bike, and I was on, it's like a beach bike, and so it's like pretty tall and kind of like a cruiser, so the handlebars like go out like this, you're sitting upright, and it was also a one-speed bike. But that didn't deter us, and we talked to my parents about it, and they're like, hey, let's go to the races. So we loaded up the bikes into the back of my dad's pickup truck and then headed off. And I remember arriving there and seeing all these people who had entered the race, and they were decked out in racing gear, and they had these fancy mountain bikes with like 18 speeds and stuff like that. And so we unloaded our bikes and we went to register, and we were matched up with kids around our own age. And fortunately for us, there's a couple people there that lent us bike helmets, so we didn't have to wear those snowmobile helmets. And I think we probably looked pretty funny too. But I remember lining up at the start line, and the starter said to us, like before we started the race, he said, just want you guys to know that this is a long and hard race, and it's a hot day today, so I just advise you all to pace yourself in order to finish the race. And I thought, well, that's good advice, because I didn't even have a water bottle holder on my bike. But as soon as he said that, my dad came up to me while I was on the start line, and he whispered in my ear, and he said, as soon as the gun sounds, get in front of everybody and go as hard as you can the entire time. That's what I did. I raced as hard as I could, and at times throughout the race, when I felt like my legs were burning, my lungs were screaming, I just thought back to my dad's words of advice to give it my all, and I think I was pretty competitive. And so there was a guy that was on my tail for about half the race that passed me, but I ended up getting second place. And so but I owe it to my dad. He was very competitive, and I think he kind of instilled that in me.
Okay. Now, so you said just a while ago that you chose hockey over ringette, and how involved were you? Like, how serious did you take hockey growing up?
Well, I took it pretty seriously. At an early age, my parents found out that women's hockey was going to be in the 1998 Olympics, and so that was kind of my goal in life. And when I was growing up, there weren't many females playing hockey, and so I played with the boys. until I was about 16 years old, and then the guys just got too big with body checking, and I had to switch to, it was, all that was available was a women's league. So I was 16 years old, and I was playing with women in their 20s and 30s, and but yeah, I took it pretty seriously. Like, I thought by making all of those boys teams, like, I felt like that was God's plan for my life, was to go to the 1998 Olympics, and it just seemed like everything was kind of falling into place by making those top teams, and I thought I had a good crack at it.
How old were you when the thought actually entered your mind that, hey, you know, I can see myself, or I could start shooting at, that basically the Olympics became your target that you wanted to participate? So how old were you at that time?
I think, I can't even remember when I found out about the 98 Olympics, but it was probably in my early teens when I found out that there was going to be, like, women's hockey was going to be at the Olympics, and I thought, wow, if I could represent Canada at the Olympic Games, and in hockey, my favorite sport, I thought that would just be amazing, and I really felt like that was God's plan for me.
So how many hours a week? So because you were doing very well in hockey, you were a fast skater, but you were doing very well. And can you share just a little bit your progression on how you actually ended up actually even trying out for the women's national team?
Yeah, so everything seemed to be going as planned. I ended up making the junior national team for women's hockey, and back then it was almost like it was in its beginning stages, and so when I made the junior national team, the only thing that I had available was we went to a tournament and played against the Americans. It was in Lake Placid, and so that was pretty neat because I'm playing with the best juniors across Canada, and I thought, like, yeah, that's another stepping stone towards my goal. And I was practicing, taking shots fairly consistently, like on the driveway, but because my skating skills were strong, but my stick handling, my shooting and stuff like that wasn't as strong as some of the other players. But I remember in 1997, I got a call to fly out to Calgary to try to make the national team. And I thought, okay, this is it. Like, it's the year before the Olympics. I'm going to make the national team according to God's plans. And I went out to the tryouts. It was, I think it was about 3 days or so, and thought that the tryouts had gone really well. And so I returned back to Winnipeg, and about 2 weeks later, I got a call saying that I had been cut from the team. And I was pretty devastated because I thought, like, well, I've done everything I can. I mean, I was making the top boys hockey teams, and then playing women's hockey. I made the junior national team, and then I got cut from the senior national team, and it was pretty hard on me. I was kind of asking God, like, well, what do I do now?
So how many hours a week would you spend, or like at that time already you were, I guess to even reach that level, you were putting a lot of time on the ice, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, there was a local community club near my parents' place, and so we were always going out to play pickup hockey, like me and my friends, and so just doing that just to get more ice time. And my dad even made an ice rink, a small ice rink in our backyard, and so I go out there, take shots and stuff, and so I was kind of a rink rat, like I was on the ice quite a bit.
Okay. So you tried out, so you didn't make the cut, you didn't make the team. I assume, yes, they know you had very high aspirations to go and play and represent Canada. So what was your first initial reaction, and what did you experience or live during that time when you had that news? Because I'm just trying to figure out, somebody who has such high aspirations and all of a sudden the grass is cut under your feet. Mm-hmm. How did you deal with that period, and how hard was it for you not to make the team at that time?
Yeah, to me it seemed like the end of the world, because it was just something that I had worked so hard towards, and I thought that was the next step, and I was going to be moving to Calgary to train with the national team, and so to me it was pretty hard. Like, I kind of, it's really something that I had worked for so long. Like, I mean, when I was a young kid, I probably thought I was going to the NHL before I realized that it's kind of difficult. I mean, it's just something that had been such a focus of mine. And so to have those dreams shattered, it was tough. And I had to think, okay, so I was entering my first year of university that following year, and I had to decide, do I still want to move to Calgary and play hockey, or should I just stay in Manitoba and start university here, or in Manitoba, and stay at home for a little bit longer and continue to play in the women's league.
Mm-hmm. So what got you then? So you were 18 years old at that time? So what got you to turn to speed skating?
So my parents had always kind of put a little bit of pressure on me to speed skate since I was a kid, just because my skating skills were so strong. I remember when I was younger, I guess we had cousins or something that were speed skating, and they said, you know, why don't we just enter you in a race? Like, it'd be a lot of fun. And my first reaction was, no way, because there's no way I was going to put on one of those tight skin suits. And then the long blades as well, they just looked funny to me. And so when I got cut from the hockey team, my parents, I think, like, they're a little hesitant to suggest this, but they suggested speed skating again. And just because I was entering university, I was used to playing hockey in high school, plus like all of the high school sports like basketball, volleyball, and badminton and stuff like that. And now all of a sudden, all I had was hockey on my plate. And so I needed something else to fill my time. And so they suggested speed skating again. And at first I didn't want to do it, but they knew one of the coaches at the local club. And so I thought, okay, I'll just make them happy and I'll go out to a practice. So I went out to my very first practice, and I remember thinking, this is going to be just like hockey, but way faster because the blades are so long. Well, I stepped onto the ice, and I was in for a big surprise because the blades are a lot narrower than a hockey skate, and then with their length, they just feel very awkward to use. And so I stepped onto the ice, and I could barely stand up, and I'm just like kind of like struggling to get around the rink, and little 5-year-old kids are just flying past me. So it was a very humbling experience, and I'm not sure why. Like my parents said I was very quiet when I came home after that first practice, and then for some reason I went to another practice, and they said I was still quiet, and they thought for sure I was going to give it up. Like, it didn't sound like it was going very well, but for some reason I just kept going, and I went to another practice and another one. The club that I started at was just amazing. Like, I was 18 years old, and so a lot older than people usually start the sport, but they were so welcoming and encouraging. And I just remember that very first year of speed skating. I remember watching the 1998 Olympics on TV and being glued to the television set, not to watch hockey, but to watch speed skating. And I remember Katrina LeMaidon winning gold, and Susan Ock, who's from Manitoba, she won silver, and I was just in awe and just so inspired by them that I thought, maybe I should pursue speed skating.
So how long was it, from the moment you started speed skating, where 5-year-olds were passing you, to the moment where somebody actually looked at you and said, this girl really has serious potential? So how long did that take in your progression there?
Well, to be honest, it took me a whole season until I worked up the guts to put on a skin suit. So I was kind of slow for a while because I had like the baggy track pants and stuff like that on. So I was a little bit slower, but my coach convinced me like that you will go faster if you wear a skin suit. And I just remember at the end of that first season, a couple of my coaches approached me and they said, you know what, why don't you try giving up hockey next year and just focus solely on speed skating and see what happens. And so it was hard to give up hockey because hockey had been such a big part of my life. But I decided that, so the following year, I was still young enough to qualify for the Canada Games. So I made a little pact with myself that if I made it to the Canada Games the following year, then I would move to Calgary, because Calgary has an indoor oval and that's where the national team trains out of. So if I made it to the Canada Games team in my second year of skating, then I would move out to Calgary and pursue speed skating full time and try to make the national team. And so in that second year of skating, not only did I qualify for the Canada Games team, but I also surprised myself by qualifying for the junior national team. And I got to go to Norway to the Junior Worlds, and I ended up winning a gold and bronze medal there. So it was kind of like, it was really surprising.
So you really had some natural talent there. Now I want to just look at your evolution in the sport. Yeah, so basically you were kind of at the disadvantage of the fact that you started off so late, but yet, you know, you reached the podium of different events very quickly. So could you share maybe a little bit about that evolution in the sport, and just maybe some insights into the time, the training invested on the ice, off the ice, maybe some of the things, the practical things you would have to do, because again, for us, we have no clue exactly what must you do, what's required to actually reach these heights. So if you would like to share with us maybe, a little bit about the time invested, you know, and the different kind of things that you'd have to do in preparation for these events.
Sure. So being inspired by those skaters at the Olympics, I taped every race that I could, and any time that speed skating was on TV, I would be recording it and then just playing it over and over, just so that I could watch their technique and try to imitate it. Because coming from hockey to speed skating, the technique is so different. And I mean, they're both on ice, they're both skating, but the technique in hockey, you're pushing back more, and in speed skating, you really have to push to the side. And so picking up that technique was probably the hardest part. And so I would just watch endless videos, and a lot of times I'd be riding like a stationary bike, and I'd put a video on and just watch and just try to visualize myself doing the same thing that they're doing. But it took a lot of extra work. I think that I did a lot of extra training during the summer months, just trying to get the volume in, because speed skating, you need that base in you of volume, in like of cycling or even inline skating. I did a lot of inline skating just because you're working the same muscles. And so I did a lot of that, probably some extra training that people didn't know about, but just to try to get up to that level, to try to make it to that level. And I mean, when a typical day, I guess, like if you want to hear about that,
sure.
Like we would basically, in Calgary, once I moved to Calgary and was training with the national team and with those heroes of mine like Katrina and Susan, it would be basically like getting up in the morning. We'd go to the rink for maybe around 8 o'clock or so and warm up for 45 to an hour, and then get on the ice around 9, and we were on the ice for maybe an hour or two. And then you take the time after the ice to maybe do a bike cool down, and then maybe do some physiotherapy or massage or whatever you needed after that ice session, so that you can get ready for the next training session. So you'd have lunch, and if you're lucky, you could get a nap in there, and then you'd be back to like maybe doing weights or maybe riding the bike, or maybe you'd have another ice session in the afternoon. But it took a lot of training. It's a lot of fatigue too, because some of the training we went through was pretty hard, and they were always pushing us to the limits.
So after all this kind of work, how did you feel? Because the first Olympics you participated in were in Salt Lake in 2002. So there you won your first medal. So how did that feel to be on the world stage? I know there's the World Championships, but the Olympic Games seems to be the games to be part of. So how did that feel that first time when you won your very first medal?
Yeah, going to the Olympics was just unbelievable. To know that I had qualified for the Canadian team and that I'd be representing Canada on the world stage at the Olympics was unbelievable. And I couldn't believe that like my dreams were coming true. And I remember leading up to my very first race, which was the 3,000 meter, and I was so nervous because I thought the whole world is watching me, and I was just incredibly nervous. And I remember that first week leading up to that first race, I was having trouble sleeping, and I was also having trouble eating. And so I remember the night before my big race, my coach said to me, "We need to get some calories in you because you're racing tomorrow." And so she took me to McDonald's, and I had like a quarter-pounder meal, my favorite, and a milkshake, and I was able to eat it. I think even before the race, the day of, I had mac and cheese, which is another comfort food for me. But I remember waking up the morning of the big race and still being extremely nervous. And so while I was killing time, I went and checked my emails, and I found out that I had gotten an email from my former high school, and it was just messages from the staff and students saying that they were praying for me, and they were excited for me, and they just wanted me to go out and do the best that I could. And when I got that email, it just kind of hit me. I'm like, I've done all the preparation, I've done everything I can, and now I'm here at my very first Olympic race, and all that's required of me, all that God is asking of me is to go and do my best, and the rest is in His hands. And so I remember going into that race, I was paired with the world record holder, and I remember starting off, like I think my dad's words of wisdom were still in my head from that night race, because I just shot off from the start. And I was ahead of her for about half the race, 7.5 laps, so maybe about 4 laps or so. And then all of a sudden, I was thinking to myself, like, I can't believe that I'm beating the world record holder. And as soon as I thought that, it was like, boom, I felt like I hit the wall. And like my energy stores were being depleted, and it almost felt like I was skating through sand. It was so hard. And I remember that the very last lap, she came flying past me like I was standing still. And I was going down the final home stretch, and I could see her. It looked like she was just miles away from me, and I'm just struggling to keep my feet moving. And finally, when I crossed the line, I found out that I was in second place, and there was only one more pair of skaters that had to go after me, and only one of those skaters beat me. So I ended up with a bronze medal in my very first race, and it was just amazing to be able to represent Canada at those games and to win a medal for our country.
Wow, that was good. Now, of course, there were several other competitions, but then obviously the 2006 Olympics. And can you just describe, how you lived that experience, what you felt? We're just amazed at how well you did and winning all those 5 medals. Can you just give us a little bit of insight into Cindy Klassen and what you experienced during that peak of your career there?
Those Olympics went better than I had imagined. Going into those games, my goal was just to do better than I had done at the 2002 Olympics. And so after my first race, I ended up winning a bronze medal again in the same race, the 3,000 meter, which was very exciting for me. And I just thought, let's see what else I can do. And I just remember everything just seemed to be going well. Everything was clicking, and I just felt very strong while I was at those games. And the race that all of you saw was the 1,500 meter. And I remember going into that race and just really feeling at peace. And I just felt like, through the whole games, I really felt like God was with me. And there's a verse in Psalm 16:8, and it talks about how I would place the Lord before me because He is at my right hand, I will not be shaken. And this verse and that whole passage or chapter, there's a singer-songwriter from Winnipeg named Steve Bell, and he put that into a song. And I remember just like playing that song over and over again and thinking about that one verse and thinking that God is with me, and going into this race, all I have to do is go and race my heart out for Him, and the rest is in His hands. And so I don't need to be shaken when I'm on the line. I don't need to be nervous. I just need to go out and race for His glory. And that really gave me the strength going into, all of those races. And especially the 1,500 meter, it just seemed like everything seemed to click there. And so it was a very special moment, and it was an honor to be able to race again for our country and to do so well at those games.
Wow. So obviously faith, plays a very big, large role in your life. So how would you describe, your faith, or how would you describe your relationship with God?
I think that, it's an ongoing thing. I came to faith at a young age, and I realized at a fairly young age, like how it's a relationship with God and how real He is. And I remember specifically one year I was playing it was a AA hockey team, and one of our coaches had made these like steel pucks for us, and just to work on our strength with our wrists and like stick handling and stuff like that. And he wanted us to be bringing them to every practice, and if you forgot them or something like that, then we'd all be skating lines or laps. And it doesn't matter if one person forgets, then everybody gets punished. And so I remember one year, I misplaced the puck, or one day I misplaced the puck and I couldn't find it anywhere, and I was like searching the whole house. I couldn't find it, and I was nervous and a bit distraught because I thought if I show up to practice the next day without this puck, I'm gonna get it, and the whole team's gonna get punished because of me. And so I just remember going to bed that night and just like, I got on my knees and I just prayed. I'm like, God, can you please show me where this puck is? And so I went to sleep that night, and I remember waking up in the morning, and the only thing I could remember was an image of this couch in our family room. And so I jumped out of bed, I ran to the family room, and looked under the couch, and there it was. And I mean, for a kid, like it's a little thing, but it was just so big for me. And to think that, like, oh, God showed me where that puck is. And so my faith is it's been a part of my life. Part of, like, our family was grounded in our faith, and I just feel like God has been with me my whole life, and I've trusted in Him, and He's never let me down. I've gone through ups and downs in my skating career, in life, but He's always been there for me and has always been faithful.
Now, that's a very good example there. And I know also while you were in speed skating and already at quite advanced, I know there's a situation that happened in your life that kind of threw a curveball at your career. Can you maybe share with us a little bit of what it was, when it happened, exactly where you were at in your career, and how did you sense, that God was there, or something that's tangible that we can, just hear from you?
Yeah. So in 2008. I was in Berlin, Germany, and getting ready for the World Championships. And I remember I had a relative in town that I had never met before, and he wanted to take me out for dinner. So we were out for dinner, and I had my phone with me, but I had it on vibrate. And I kept getting these messages, but I thought it would be rude because I just met this person. I didn't want to be like looking at my phone while we're having dinner. So I just let it go. And after he had dropped me off at our hotel, I took out my phone to look at the messages, and there was a pile of messages mostly from my brother, and there was a couple from my coaches. And my brother just had sent me a text message, and he said, "Call home. Lisa, who is my sister, has been in an accident." And so my first thought was plane crash, because she's a flight instructor. But I called home, and it turned out that she was on her way to work in the morning. So this is in Winnipeg. And I think it was in February, so it was pretty cold. And she was going over this bridge that goes over a river in Winnipeg, and she lost control. And somehow, I guess, the snow was kind of like piled up on the side by the guardrail. So she slid over to the side of the guardrail and like ramped up because of the snow. And then the people behind her said that her vehicle was kind of like on top, teetering for a bit. And then she fell over and upside down to the river, and I think it was like 15 meters or something, and broke through the ice. And so, fortunately, there was an off-duty firefighter that was behind her, and for some reason his car wouldn't start that morning, and so he ended up being a little bit later than he normally was to wherever he was going. And so that put him right behind my sister. And he basically stopped. He said that after we spoke to him, he said that he thought he could just like grab the car and pull it down because it was just like kind of teetering there. But after it fell over, he ran down to the riverbank, and he saw these two women walking, and they had a walking stick, and he just grabbed the walking stick to smash the window open. And as he's running, he's thinking like as if this is going to even do anything. But somehow he was able to get the window smashed open. And my sister was submerged under the water, and she was stuck in there with her seatbelt on. And so he's just like trying to hold her head up above the water, but he couldn't get her out because of the seatbelt. But there was another man he was going to a physiotherapy appointment, and for some reason he had taken his filleting knife and thrown it in the car. And before he left that morning, his wife said to him, like, "Why are you bringing that big jacket?" And apparently he had this big, like, I don't know if it was like a fur coat or something. It was something really big and warm. And he's like, "I don't know, I just feel like wearing it." So he had that with him. And when he was right around my sister as well, and so he was able to get that filleting knife down to the off-duty firefighter who cut the seatbelt and got my sister out, and they were able to use that coat to keep her warm. And I think it was the off-duty firefighter who resuscitated her, and then the ambulance came, and she was able to say, I think, her name and her occupation before she blacked out, and they took her to the hospital. So that's the news that I got from my brother, and he said to me, like, we don't think she's going to make it. That's what the doctors are saying, and so you might want to come home as soon as possible. And so it was nighttime in Germany, and I couldn't get out of there till the next morning, and so I booked the first flight home, and I had to stay in Germany that first night. And I just remember during that time, like, I had a lot of time to pray and think, and I just remember getting on my knees and praying for Lisa and praying for a miracle in her life. But it was just amazing because I was able to give it over to God and release her into his hands. And I just felt like this overwhelming amount of peace come over me. And I felt like God was telling me it's going to be okay. And I didn't know whether that meant she was going to make it or not, but I just knew that he was in control and like I could leave her in his hands. So I flew back the long flight home. I had to fly to Montreal and then to Winnipeg. And I remember landing in Montreal and just seeing television screens, and they had images of my sister's vehicle like getting rolled over, and just thinking, like, how could anybody survive that? But there was kind of like, it was almost like there was a bubble around the driver's side, like everything else was smashed up on the passenger side, but it was like a bubble where she was. And so I got to the hospital and she was still alive. And I just remember going into the intensive care unit, and she was at the bed at the end, and I just remember walking past and like seeing these people and kind of bracing myself, just thinking, like, what am I going to see when I reach her bed? And I remember her sitting there. She was intubated, so she couldn't talk, and she had like a lot of machines behind her, just like beeping and making all sorts of noises. And so it was kind of shocking to see her like that. And I remember at the beginning they said to me that they were going to keep what had happened to her, like keep it a secret, because they thought that it could traumatize her and make her worse. So they had turned the TV screen so she couldn't see anything, and they said, just don't mention the accident, whatever you do. And so when I got there, she was able to write on a piece of paper, and the first thing she did was write, I think I know what happened. And she's like, and then she drew a picture of like a bridge with a car going over, and I'm like, oh, like, what do I say? And so I guess she knew a bit more than she was letting on. And she basically, she was in there for a week. The doctors, for about 5 days, they were concerned that she wasn't going to make it. And so I just remember we had so much prayer and people thinking of us, and from our church family and from people across Canada. It was just amazing to feel the support that we did from the community and from our country. And so those prayers like really sustained us and our family and Lisa as well, because after about 5 days, suddenly she just turned a corner, and the doctors can't explain it, but she just turned a corner, and she was out of the intensive care unit after about a week. And it was just a miracle like that she survived it, and that she didn't have any brain damage or anything like that. She was able to make a full recovery. And so we're just so grateful to God. And I finished my season. I ended up staying with her for the rest of her recovery, like for the next few months. And it was just an amazing time to be able to be with family, and just the support that we had, and that feeling of peace that God gave us, even though, like, when I look back now, I feel like I should have been going out of my mind, but God really gave us, it says in the Bible, the peace that transcends all understanding, and we really felt that.
It's good. So obviously faith plays a good role, and the main role in your life, and you've experienced God at different levels. There's something quite interesting. I was looking on the internet when the first Olympics started. So I looked up, first Olympics, and I got to, it gave me a site about the ancient Greek Olympics. Did you know the Olympics started 776 years before Christ? That's how far back the Olympics started. And those ancient Olympics lasted till about 300 and something. And then they were taken up again in our modern times. But I was just reading up on those first Olympics, because I got to thinking, and I want to talk to you about this, because there's actually a passage. Did you know that the Olympics are actually mentioned in the Bible, in the New Testament? I bet you didn't know that, right? I want to read you a passage, and because of this passage, I would like for Cindy to give us a little bit of insight, because it refers to Olympians in this text, and I would like to see what she has to say, about this passage. And it's actually found in the letter of Paul to a church in Corinth, in Greece. So here's what he says. He says, do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the games, and he's referring to, because like I said, these existed, and they were the ancient Olympic games of those days. So he says, everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown. Now it's more medals than crowns. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Therefore, I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer. Those were one of the 6 disciplines in those ancient Olympics was boxing. So I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. No, I strike a blow to my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. So obviously here the Apostle Paul used an Olympic athlete in this object lesson. And having an Olympic athlete in our midst, I would just like to maybe, if you can share just briefly a little bit, some of what insights that you bring out of this passage and what he's referring to here, or anything from personal experience.
Yeah, well, it makes me think back to the training that I did as a speed skater. I remember how every moment of the day I was thinking about, is this actually helping or hindering my speed skating career? And we were talking about earlier too how my husband now, like when we were just dating, we went out to the zoo one day, and I think it was in the fall, and we were just walking around, and it was a cool day, but nice enough to be walking outside. And I said to him, when I was skating, I would never do this. And he was kind of surprised. He was like, why? And I said, well, if I was outside for a long time, I was on my feet for a long time, and it's cold outside, I would just think that I'm wasting energy. And maybe I won't be as strong the next day in my practice. And so every single thing that I did was intentional as to whether it was going to be good for my speed skating or if it wasn't. That included diet, it included sleep, it included getting enough rest and stuff like that. And so when I think about this passage, I think about that too, about I'm skating and speed skating for an Olympic medal that is physical. And actually, I wanted to share something with you. So I brought my medals too. This is a gold medal. And the interesting thing is that if you're welcome to have a look later, but it's starting to rust a little bit. And the thing is that this medal, it's an honor. I'm so proud of being able to win a gold medal for Canada. But this medal isn't going to last forever. And there's actually a verse in the Bible in Matthew 6:19-21, and he says, Jesus says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy and where thieves cannot break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And so when I think about that passage, when I think about this medal that's tarnishing, and I think about the passage that you read that Paul said, it just makes me think that these are just earthly treasures that I'm working towards, and when I come to the end of my life, these aren't going to amount to much, right? And working towards eternal glory and being in the kingdom of God, I think that's something that I need to be more intentional about, and I need to be thinking about every second of the day, because that's way more valuable than an Olympic medal that I put so much energy and effort into. But eternal life and the cost of Jesus dying on the cross for me is so much more valuable than an Olympic medal. So I really like that passage,
Yeah.
and I think it's very important, a good reminder to be intentional with our faith.
Thank you very much. I know when we talked earlier today, and actually it was last night, and when right when we arrived in Arrow Falls, Cindy was a little bit hungry, so we said, well, in Arrow Falls we don't have a whole lot, but we have at Timmy's, and so we went to Timmy's, and she shared the fact that how intentional she was. Everything like had to do, does this help, or does this hinder, and being so conscious about that, and so this passage, like you say, I think it just relates this, it puts this idea in the spiritual perspective. In the same way you do this in the physical, in the same way you can do that and live mindful of that in the spiritual sense.